Deputy President, I rise to speak on the Social Services Legislation Amendment Bill 2017. It appears the main aspects of this bill will freeze indexation for 3 years on most working age allowances and for parenting payments single, as well as freeze indexation on family tax payments for 2 years. It doesn't matter how you package the new Social Services Legislation Amendment Bill, it still cuts almost $2 billion from Australia's most vulnerable families. In the 4 years it will take to raise almost $2 billion from families who need it the most, a modest financial transactions tax on Australia's highest high-frequency share traders could raise 4 times that amount. We are wasting our time arguing over crumbs when 600 out of the 1,500 top companies don't even pay tax. The Liberal government wants to hand over $50 billion worth of tax cuts to their big business mates, and that is a tax on profit, not revenue, so we know the businesses aren't losing. But do you know who's losing out of this deal? Everyday families struggling to make ends meet. If the government cuts $50 a fortnight from families, the government has cut the family's power budget or their insurance. On the other side of the tracks, high-frequency share trading companies will not even notice a 0.01% or 0.1% financial transactions tax. A financial transactions tax has the capacity to raise $1.4 billion with little impact to the economy. $1.4 billion a year would fund the Liberal government's childcare reforms and more. And that isn't even including other economic reforms I have been talking about for more than 2 years now, which include a 15% death tax on estates worth more than $5 million and a cap on capital gains tax exemptions for houses worth more than $2 million. Combine those measures with the financial transactions tax and the government could be raising almost $10 billion a year for the budget without taking from Australia's poorest families. Perhaps if the Liberal government had the political courage to tie these measures to the childcare reforms, instead of playing the game, how much money can we get away with taking from the poor Australians this time, we wouldn't still be here debating this bill. If the Liberal government had the political courage to tie these measures to the childcare reforms, then perhaps they would have the funds to expand the childcare reforms to the children who need it most so they can access early childhood education and childcare. There are many families out there who have no desire to meet the generous activity test the Liberal government has proposed, and it is these children who need childcare the most. It is these children who are part of broken homes, surrounded by devastating circumstances that no child should have to be subjected to, let alone live in. 12 to 15 hours of childcare a fortnight is not enough to rescue these children from their environment. It is established that disadvantage perpetuates disadvantage, and that is why we are stuck in this intergenerational welfare cycle. We also know that the first 5 years of a child's life shapes their attitudes, their health and their well-being for the rest of their life. Intergenerational welfare will continue to be a burden on the federal budget unless we nip it in the bud right now. Spending money on our children and families now is an investment in Australia's future. But please don't take my word for it. Perhaps my colleagues would be persuaded by Harvard University research. In 2010, Harvard University Centre on the Developing Child released a document called Core Concepts in the Science of Early Childhood Development, and it says, and I quote, "When we invest wisely in children and families, the next generation will pay that back through a lifetime of productivity and responsible citizenship. When we fail to provide children with what they need to build a strong foundation for healthy and productive lives, we put our future prosperity and security at risk." Cognitive, emotional and social capacities or capabilities are inextricably entwined in the brain, and in like fashion, learning, behaviour and both physical and mental health are highly interrelated throughout the life course. One domain cannot be targeted without affecting the others. The brain's multiple functions operate in a richly coordinated fashion. Emotional well-being and social competence provide a strong foundation for emergent cognitive abilities, and together they are the bricks and mortar that comprise the foundation of human development. The emotional and physical health, social skills and cognitive capacities that emerge in the early years are all important prerequisites for success in school and later in the workplace and in the community. Scientists now know that chronic, unrelenting stress in early childhood, perhaps caused by extreme poverty, neglect, repeated abuse, or severe maternal depression, for example, can be toxic to the developing brain. While positive stress is an important and necessary aspect of healthy development, toxic stress is a strong, unrelieved activation of the body's stress management system in the absence of the buffering protection of adult support." End quote. Mr Acting Deputy President, the government is supposed to support Australian public, not be the source of toxic stress for families. Now, I know that protecting family tax benefit for Australia's most vulnerable and providing a safe, positive environment for disadvantaged children on their own won't end intergenerational welfare dependency. We need a holistic approach, which is why we'll be putting forward a motion to the Senate encouraging the government to include the cashless debit card in their May budget. My motion reads, as per cashless debit card trial evaluation wave 1 interim evaluation report February 2017 evaluation reports of the 66% of CDC participants who reported drinking, gambling or taking drugs before or during the trial. 33% reported a reduction in at least one of these behaviours. 31% of the participants indicated they had been able to save more money. 31% indicated they could care for their children much better, and 31% logged an improvement in technology use. 46% of non-participants said life in the community was better. Only 18% disagreed. Only 6% of all participants explicitly raised stigma or shame associated with the CDC as an issue. Community leaders, stakeholders generally responded that they had seen an increase between 32 to 56% ability to afford basic household goods, ability to pay bills, nutrition and health and well-being. It is common for adolescents to begin drinking alcohol at 14 or 15 years of age, with the behaviour increasing as they get older, with its ability to impair judgment, coordination. Excessive drinking contributes to crime, violence and antisocial behaviours and accidents. Adolescence is often characterised by rapid physical and psychological transition, experimentation and risk-taking behaviour. This includes illicit drug use, causing both short and long-term mental and physical health issues. Those who participate in early drug use are more likely to continue with future illicit and problematic drug use. Australia-wide 17 years and under are learning to become productive members of our community. So by introducing the CDC to this age group and breaking the cycle on addictive behaviours would be more beneficial into the future for their own development and the communities that they live in. So I'll be calling on the government to support the inclusion in the upcoming May budget for a further rollout of the CDC for all persons 17 years of age and under that are on AB study, living allowance, assistance for isolated children, carer payment, disability support pension, parenting payment partnered, parenting payment single, special benefit, youth allowance, apprentice youth allowance, other youth allowance student across Australia on the 1st of January 2018. Mr Acting Deputy President, the Liberal government suffered a great loss at the last election in Tasmania, and it is because of bills like this. The bill affects Tasmanians disproportionately, and any money the government takes from families is money that is snatched from the engine that runs the Tasmanian economy, which is small businesses. Trickle-down economics does not work. When you give money to a multinational corporation, more often than not that money doesn't stay in the country, it is sent offshore. But if you give some money to families, they spend it all in their local communities, keeping small business alive and keeping their doors open. They do their groceries at the IGA down the road. They buy their gifts from the cute little gift shop in town. And maybe they take their kids out for a hot chocolate and a trip to the cinemas once a month. For families living pay to pay, the family tax benefit forms a vital part of their household budget, and I cannot sit back and let the government make cuts to that. I want to tell you a little bit about my story. I want to tell you what happened to me and very quickly when I was medically discharged from the Armed Forces in 2000. When I was medically discharged, I thought, no worries, the Department of Veterans Affairs will help me get back on my feet and they'll look after me. Well, that did not happen to me. So for me to be able to survive as a single mum with 2 kids, I had no other choice but to go to Centrelink. I had work. I'd been serving Rotary at tables from the time I was 10. I was working at the Speedway at 12 and I had my first job at Kmart when I was 14 years and 9 months. I worked in nightclubs and I worked in a supermarket during that time. I took a gap year and went and worked in the real world. That's what I did. So you can imagine to me what it was like, how shameful it felt and how demeaning it was for me to be able to work my whole life, to become a single mum, living with 2 kids, trying to support them on a disability support pension. During that time, our times were tough. There were times when I had to say no to my son, who was great at football and great at athletics and great at basketball and who had the advantage of being able to represent his state, and telling him on 2 occasions, I'm sorry, mate, but you can't go because I can't afford for you to go. At one stage there, he was wearing football boots that were too small for him from the winter beforehand because I couldn't afford to get him some. He had to wait. There were times when I would sit in a corner and cry because I felt so ashamed. For 2 days I didn't know how I was going to put bread and milk on the table. There was a time when my fridge broke, and for 3 weeks we lived out of an esky, and I put the esky under the house so the ice would last longer. That's what my life was like. There was 3 occasions where I couldn't afford my rego for 4 weeks one time, 6 weeks another time, and 10 weeks another time, and I drove around without a registered car. On 2 separate occasions I drove around without having a licence because I couldn't renew it. In 2006 I was going bankrupt and I would have lost my family home. I struggled for another 12 months until I went into Nick Sherry's office and begged him to help me to get my super released. Nick Sherry was very good to me, the Honourable Senator Sherry. He got that money for me within 3 weeks, but I paid dividends for that because there is no clauses in there if you are sick or injured or in dire straits that you will still get taxed because you are taking it out early. I lost a great deal of my super, but in the meantime, at least it saved my house. It gave us a little bit more breathing space. Had it have not been for the Honourable Senator Sherry, then I can assure you I would have went bankrupt. That's what my life was like for 7 years. I had to beg and borrow to fight a government bureaucracy in a court system until I won and pay that money back. But I can tell you, I was so far behind by the time that I won that case and my money was backdated. My bills had piled out. I can tell you, 7 years on disability support pension, I sure as hell did not come out in front. This is what it is like. It is not a choice for many of us to be on welfare. It is shameful and it is embarrassing. And it is bloody tough. But we do it not because we want to, but because circumstances put us there. And for you to take more money off those people, you have no idea how bloody tough it is. Every little cent counts to those people. What you are doing is shameful. And if you really realise the damage that you are continually doing to that part of society, you would stop doing it. So I'm just asking you, I know you haven't been through that, but there are some of us in here that have. And it was difficult during our lives, and our kids paid the price for that, through no fault of our own. So, I just wish you would reconsider what you're doing. Because,
We're not living when we're like that. We're surviving. We're in a bloody war zone and we are surviving. And that's all we're doing. Each day we're surviving. We are surviving to try and put bread on the table. We are surviving to try and make sure that our kids can get the basics in life. We are trying to make sure our kids are better, so our kids can go to decent schools if we want that choice. You know, I was really lucky in some areas, and I thank St Brendan Shaw College, who allowed me, when I got in very difficult situations for 3 years, not to pay school fees for my children, but they let them stay there. So I want you to know that's what it's like to be at the bottom of the crap pile through no fault of our own for many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lambie. Senator Polly.
Thank you, Madam